Good morning. During Christmas time, we think of others. It's a time where we think of spending time together or buying the right gift or just enjoying each other's company. But I wonder how many of us think about God. Now, that could seem like a crazy question, right? Because the whole holiday is about taking and paying attention to the fact that God becomes incarnate in the birth of a child. That this immense love that God has had for us forever finally takes shape in this celebration of Christmas in a very unique, particular way. But I mean, thinking about the God of the universe, what this God feels on this occasion, at this time, where God has been, we think maybe perhaps that God is passive, right? That just kind of sitting up there on a souped up cloud, watching what's going on down here, hoping that it's all good. And it's kind of the nostalgia of a Hallmark card. And yet we know that God's heart is beating faster at the thought of this promise finally coming to fruition. Really, it's been on God's mind and heart since the beginning of time that this would happen. How do I show my people how much I love them? I show them by becoming one with them so that they can recognize my love. They recognize my love the way they recognize each other's love, through human flesh, through human eyes, through human embraces and touches. And so in many ways, I know that God is as excited for the birth of this child as we are. And we think about what that means. So God, having planned this forever, God, who does not live in linear time, right? Does not live chronologically. Present, past, future, all exist at once. And yet, how does God communicate God's love to us who do live in chronological time? God has to abide by the rules of nature that God has put in place. So until everything is perfect, God actually has to wait to act. I mean, we know what that feels like. You have a wonderful gift, you want to give it to somebody, you can't wait. Oh, you can't wait so that you can see their face when they open it. God has to wait. And in this occasion, in this waiting, we may feel too that, how has that been for us? You and I wait, not just when we give a gift, but also sometimes we wait for everything to be right, for the timing to be right, perhaps with those we love, perhaps with a partner in love, waiting until they're ready, waiting for our children to reach a certain point of life before we have conversations or can express things in new ways, waiting for our workplaces to come around so that we can actually engage in thoughtful, meaningful work. Maybe even waiting for our church. How many of us wish our churches were more flexible, more embracing, more resilient, more quick to act? I know I do. This is the situation that God has. That this God of the universe, this divine who has waited from all eternity to be able to express that huge, immense divine love to us in ways that we would recognize. And so, knowing that about God, then you think, what did God feel when those first infant cries pierced the sky, the night sky? Did God cry? God finally exhaled, holding God's breath for all the millennia until God could send this incarnation of what God's love looks like. So in my waiting, in the ways that I have to wait for things to happen and for everything to be in a perfect place so that I can actually act on things, the timing. It helps me to know that God too is waiting sometimes to communicate to me, and has waited through all of eternity to share over and over again this incarnated love that God has for us. So this Christmas, when we think about this God who is immensely moved by our situation, this God who is not a plaster God or a cardboard image, everything you feel this Christmas and the 12 days that follow, right? Christians celebrate Christmas for 12 days. Everything you feel, God feels. So if you feel a little bluer than usual or a little heavier than usual, know that God understands and feels exactly the same thing with you. God incarnate in your life, your companion. Spend a little time with that thought this Christmas. What does it mean to be loved by a God who waits? A God who feels immensely and who'll do anything that we would understand what that physical love that God has for us looks like.